We are going to take a few minutes now to meet two National Hadassah staffers. Diana Diner is Hadassah's Zionist educator, and Randy Richmond is director of Evolve Hadassah, the next generation. They're going to be speaking to us about evolving Zionism, the Evolve Fellowship, and what they see as a future for Zionist thought. After that, Diana and Randy will introduce our final panel of the evening, What Zionism Means to Me, moderated by Michelle Rojas-Tal and featuring a group of truly inspiring speakers.
Thank you, Stephanie. I am a Hadassah Life member. I am a loud and proud Zionist, and I'm a product of Hadassah's Young Women's Department. As a volunteer, well before I worked for Hadassah, I visited Israel on a Hadassah Young Women's mission. It connected me to the land of Israel and to the incredible work that Hadassah does. It changed my life forever. I am so honored to be the director of Evolve Hadassah. I'm helping to ensure the future of Hadassah. So Evolve Hadassah is the next generation, and we welcome young women into Hadassah. We connect them to each other and to Israel. We inspire them to put their values into action and empower them to make an impact. We offer relevant and engaging programming, opportunities for leadership training and development, and specially designed Israel travel experiences. Being part of Evolve is a benefit to being a member of Hadassah. Contact me to find out how you can make personal connections that will last a lifetime and create transformational change in the world through our Evolve opportunities. And my email address and the Evolve email address will be in the chat. If you are not a member of Hadassah yet, I invite you to join. You can too be part of the largest women's and the largest Zionist organization in America. We ask you to join us and add your voice to our powerful community supporting Israel and healing the world.
Thank you, Randy. I actually started working for Young Judea, which is part of Hadassah's youth movement, in 2009. And it took me about 2 days before I was like, oh, okay, I'm a Zionist. So Hadassah has been, I became a Zionist because of Hadassah, so I want to say thank you. So my name is Diana Diner, and I am the Zionist educator. And about a week ago, one of my colleagues asked me what my favorite panel was at the symposium, and I said, I love my babies equally. I cannot choose. But the What Zionism Means to Me panel does fill me with the most hope, because we are uplifting the voices of young women Zionists and really hearing on a local and national level what the younger generation has to say about Israel and Zionism. The idea came about because prior to me coming to Hadassah again, graciously allowed me to come again, I worked with those in the 15 to 25-year-old age group. And I was on high school and college campuses on a daily basis, sometimes even more than one campus per day. And in doing Israel education and programming, I really got to see what this generation was thinking, acting, talking about, socially posting on Israel and Zionism. It occurred to me that there are amazing organizations that do Jewish and Israel programming, and I've worked with them, and they're amazing. And they do programs and seminars, and of them, 99.9% of them feature speakers that are part of an older generation, and many of the speakers are older males. And while I think the speakers are fantastic, I have bought their books, and I have asked them to autograph their books because of how amazing they are. They really are part of a generation that learned about Israel in a very different way. Based on my work, it really feels like my generation and the generation that's younger have a very different way of looking at Israel and Zionism, and a very different way of speaking about Israel and Zionism. I could tell that this community of passionate Zionists felt invisible, and I really wanted to change that. And I was incredibly lucky to get the blessing of my education and advocacy department, our amazing volunteers, and Randy and the Evolve team. Randy and I agree so much on this topic that during Zoom meetings, we even nod our head in the same cadence. It's very nice. whenever I invited a speaker, I always told them, I see you and I hear you. But most importantly, Hadassah sees you, Hadassah hears you, and we will elevate your voice. The purpose of the symposium and what the Zionism means to me panel and our education philosophy is never to change anyone's mind about Zionism, but rather to open up people's understanding of what Zionism looks like in 2023 and beyond, and to have intergenerational conversations in a safe, bold space about Israel and Zionism yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I have two very, very, very simple rules. You're not allowed to yes each other to death. It would be a very boring and very quick symposium if everyone unilaterally agreed, and to be as open and honest as possible. During our first What Zionism Means to Me panel that we piloted in Atlanta, one of the speakers who leaned a certain way emailed me after and said, "Thank you for not yelling at me." And I literally had absolutely no idea what she was talking about, but she said that she had spoken at a different organization and she was very heavily chastised for her views. I immediately stopped her and said that under no circumstances, number one, would I allow that. And there was no way that Hadassah would ever allow that to happen. I very, very simply told her, do you consider yourself a Zionist? Do you feel comfortable sharing your views? Mazels, welcome to the Hadassah family. Will you talk about some things that might make viewers uncomfortable? Probably. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to hear from you and learn from your views. We got feedback from the members that joined her program that not only did they want more, they demanded more What Zionism Means to Me program. And so this began like a thought that processed in our heads. And so we began to pilot this in other places in the US. One of my friends who works in Israel education was part of a different panel, and she called me after and she said, I felt like a rock star. I felt like $1 million. She said that the panel, which, because it was live, she said that she was surrounded by 100 Hadassah members. She was like, first of all, they're all Jewish mothers, so all of them told me I need to eat more, but also that they couldn't stop thanking me. So many of them told me that while they may not think the way that I do, they know that their kids and grandkids have very much the same thought process that I did, and that that I needed to come back and have a program for them and for the people who asked me to do the program because they just wanted to hear it again. So that's when I knew we had something special. The voices of the younger generation of passionate Zionists is being heard, and Hadassah members and the wider audience is absolutely listening. So it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce our last panel and our moderator, Michelle Rojas-Tal. Unfortunately, we only have an hour, so in that hour, I would probably just talk about how amazing Michelle is, but she is Hadassah's past Zionist scholar in residence. She was previously the director of diaspora education for the Israeli advocacy organization Stand With Us. The Tel Aviv Institute named Michelle to the 2021-2022 the Jewish 100 list of influential activists, educators, and leaders who are fighting hate. In 2013, she was featured in the Jerusalem Post's list of the 50 most influential Jews in the world, and was named one of the only 6 women to watch in the Jewish world. So with that, please, I welcome everybody to the panel. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you all. I apologize for my stuffiness. As you can all hear, as Diana knows, I'm getting over a cold that my children were kind enough to give to me. But I'm so excited to see so many wonderful women on this call together with me, not only colleagues, but women who truly are friends and mean the world to me. Before I begin, it goes without saying that for all of us, our hearts, our minds, our souls right now are in Israel, with the people of Israel, with the victims, with the hostages, with the missing, and their loved ones. And I know for all of the women on this call and for everyone listening in, everyone is doing their part and praying and taking action for a safe and swift return for all of the innocent hostages being held by Hamas. And we will continue to do everything in our power to bring their stories to the world and demand that they come home. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I think it's an incredibly important time in this hour that really is so trying for all of us to be together in community and to really remind ourselves of the reason why we're all here, the reason why all of this matters to us. So thank you all for being here this evening. And I'm a strong believer that save the best for last, right? So I'm very confident this will be a phenomenal conversation with three incredible Zionist women. So thank you all again. I will start by introducing our speakers. We'll start with Rayna Rose Exelbierd. Rayna, hi Rayna, it's so good to see you, is an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, a youth mentor, and children's author. And I know because I have her children's books for my own little girls, and they love her books. So her podcast, The Rose Grows, features survivors and stories of human connection and kindness. She has volunteered in the Israeli army and at the Hadassah Medical Organization, strengthening her identity as a proud Zionist and Jewish woman. Her mother and grandmother are Hadassah lifelong members. Rayna was a part of Hadassah's 18 American Zionist women that you should know. And we are so excited. I'm so excited to see you here tonight, Rayna, and listen to more about what you have to say about Zionism and everything else that's on our minds right now. So good to see you. Stephanie Malka is an American-Israeli businesswoman currently living in Las Vegas, Nevada with her family. She and her Israeli-born husband, Owen, are business owners, investors, and active members of the Las Vegas Jewish community. Stephanie has been a Hadassah Life member since joining the organization in 2013 and recently became a keeper of the gate at the Heart of Hadassah Symposium this past July in Chicago. She is currently an Evolve Leadership Fellow and serves as the advocacy chair on the Hadassah Southern Nevada chapter board. Good to see you, Stephanie. Destiny Albritton. So Destiny, how could I fumble on that one? It's my cold. Destiny Albritton is the National Outreach Director at the Israel on Campus Coalition. She oversees the ICC's efforts to broaden the base of Israel's friends beyond the Jewish community. Destiny is also the host of Beyond Campus, a podcast that delves into various topics pertaining to Israel, Zionism, and having a positive connection to Israel on campus and beyond. In addition, she has a large social media following, over 660,000 followers on TikTok, where she reads Bible verses for over 11 million people worldwide. Destiny was the Southeast Regional Director at the ICC for 4 years prior to taking on her current role at the Israel on Campus Coalition. And I know you are incredibly busy nowadays, Destiny, with everything going on campus, and I'm sure there are a number of folks who will have some questions about that. So I want us to jump right in. Again, I'm so honored to be here with all of you ladies. And I think we will start from the very top, which is, how would you describe your own Zionist identity? And if it sounds good, we'll go backwards in order from introduction. So we'll start with Destiny. Destiny, hit us off.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you so much, Hadassah, for organizing this gathering at such a dark time. It's really wonderful to see such strong Zionist women gathering together like this in a dark time. So just thank you for that. For me, Zionism, I grew up in mid-Missouri. I grew up in a small college town where I don't think I met a Jewish person knowingly until I was about 18 or 19 years old. But when I got to college and I started learning about modern Israel, and I realized I really had no idea what was going on with modern Israel, because as a nice Christian girl in Columbia, Missouri, I pictured Prince of Egypt whenever I thought about Israel or Jewish people. And so I kind of went on this journey trying to ask myself and discover for myself what was going on in modern Israel and what did this have to do with me. And I realized that the story of Israel didn't end when they stopped writing books of the Bible. I realized the people of Israel live, right? And I realized that by being a part of like Israel advocacy, I could leave my mark on that same story. And so to me, that is what Zionism is. Zionism is the movement for self-determination of the Jewish people that, yes, was really revived with Herzl, but really started with the heroes of our faith, like Moses, Esther, Nehemiah. They became heroes by contributing to Jewish self-determination. And all of us here today, we have a really beautiful opportunity to leave our mark on that same story, especially in these dark times. And so for me, that's what Zionism is.
I love that. Stephanie?
Hi. Thank you so much. I really love what Destiny said about the modern state, because the first time I went to Israel, I was 15 years old, and I went with my mother and my stepfather, and we were there for 3 weeks. And I think for about 10 days of those 3 weeks, my stepfather just walked around going, Israel is real. Like, it's real. It's not just a story. It's not the lost city of Atlantis. It's an actual place with postal carriers and movie theaters, and you can buy lottery tickets and have a car accident. Like, it's a real place. And I found that really fascinating, because I didn't grow up religious. And when I moved to Israel, I did it mostly from a sort of secular Zionist perspective. I believed in the state. I believed that we needed to have the state for our own perpetuation as a cohesive group. I began my religious journey just before moving. And today I'd say I'm a pretty traditional Zionist. I definitely hold by the idea that Zionism is a cornerstone of our faith, and it is our homeland. In Rashi's very first explanation, the very first thing Rashi wrote was that no one should try and tell the Jewish people that they're occupiers in their own land. And how appropriate that is for us right now, that even 1100 years ago, he was warning the Jewish people that this is going to happen, beware. And so I'm a very traditional Zionist, and I do have a lot of family in Israel. 2 of my 4 children were born there, in Hadassah hospitals, actually. And I definitely believe that not just from the perspective of modern Jewry, but for our heritage, we definitely need to be mindful of protecting that legacy and owning the word Zionism in the way we define it, and not in the way it's getting defined from the outside looking in these days.
Amazing. Rayna, last but not least.
Yeah. I think for me, it's really been a growth journey of personal discovery through religion, through experiences, through once in a lifetime connections. I think as a young teen, Israel really represented to me belonging. I always felt very accepted for who I was by the Israeli shlichim who'd be in my community. And I always felt like I had a home there. When I was 18 and I lived there for a year, that was really my coming out as a woman. It was like the first time in my life I felt smart and pretty and confident, and I didn't have to change anything about myself. And being a Jewish girl from Memphis, Tennessee, people are often shocked to find out that the first time I ever experienced anti-Semitism was as a college student in South Florida in Boca Raton. So quickly when that happened, not only did I realize that I have to get educated, but Israel really started to represent survival. And it gave my skill sets a new sense of purpose, because before I experienced the anti-Semitism, my vision was I want to make a lot of money. I want to go into politics. I never thought about using my gift for speech and organizing and building relationships when it came to the relationship with Israel. And the last thing that I want to say about my Zionist identity that in the last couple of weeks have come up for me, I've been doing this work for 10 years. I've mentored hundreds of teenagers. And one of the most rewarding experiences recently is seeing some of those teen leaders now in their 20s, organizing efforts for Israel, getting involved with different organizations. So Israel has given me so much, but I've also in more recent times, seen my connection to Zionism as an opportunity to educate, inspire, and empower other people to, take on those leadership roles with whatever skill sets that they have, whatever experience level they may be at that time.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible feeling, right? When we see people that have been a part of our life's journey and maybe have taken a little bit of something from us and are pushing that forward. I see that with you, Rayna, right? And that's like, I'm not giving away my age here, but that gives me such pride and joy to see like that we are, as women Zionists, like we have the ability to impart that onto the next generation as well. And it's so incredibly important. So as we're seeing today, and we can't help but talk about the current situation we're dealing with and just the abhorrent level of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment that we're seeing on college campuses, in the streets, protest following the massacre in Israel and the ensuing military actions being taken by Israel, rightfully so, in the Gaza Strip. And it wasn't that just right now conversations around Zionism are difficult and challenging. They have been for quite some time. So I wanted to hear a little bit more, and we can start with you, Stephanie, your take on why it's been that conversations around Zionism have been sensitive at best, difficult at worst, for a lot of people within the American Jewish community. And what is the type of conversation or discourse that you would like for people to have around Zionist identity?
Well, I think part of the problem is if you ever want to get verbally bullied, a good way is to mention that you're pro-Israel, whether it's online or off at a cocktail party. I know I personally avoided, too much posting about Israel on my Facebook or my Instagram for years, because that's just not the place I want to go to have those kind of conversations. You can lose your entire day arguing with people and getting a barrage. Even in the past 2 weeks, I've gotten some really nasty messages about what might happen to my Jewish children if I don't stop. And it's just posting and reposting about the current situation. So if I think the sort of natural inclination to be conflict avoidant gets a lot of people to just be like, you know what, why bother? They're crazy. I don't even want to have that conversation with that person. It isn't until we get to a crisis situation where we realize that now we're behind the 8 ball, we have to have those conversations, and we realize that we don't have the tools or the vocabulary to have that. Now we've got to play catch up because they've spent years building propaganda, appropriating the word Zionist and Zionism and turning it into a dirty word. And I think we've been complacent and looking the other way, going, we know they're crazy, and not realizing that maybe not everyone knows they're crazy. And now we have to develop that vocabulary to fight back in a way that I don't think we've really been doing until just these past few weeks. Even Israel's PR campaign has changed dramatically in the past few weeks, very visibly. So I think that's something that we all have to get together in the program with and start doing.
You raise a point, Stephanie, and Destiny will remember her and I having this conversation a few years back. Destiny and I share something else in common. We are both part Puerto Rican, and I remember saying to Destiny, and she was one of the people that understood me, that I had grave concern when there was a very necessary conversation in this country happening around racial equity following the murder of George Floyd. The Jewish community was absolutely in the right place, standing together with the Black community in the United States in the fight for racial justice and equality. My concern was some of the semantics around the term white privilege and how Jews were being put in that box at the time. And that specific point, I remember being gravely concerned with, because I said, if this is where the conversation is going, what does it mean when it comes to anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism and the Jewish community then being perceived as having the right, per se, in bunny ears, to define what that is for themselves if we have now been put in this very specific box. So I can't help but continue to think about that. And I've shared that sentiment with a number of people because I literally had this very grave fear of where that would go. I don't think any of us could have imagined what we're seeing today, but I was very, very concerned because language matters and words matter, and the associations that they carry with them. So when you said that, that was something that really it struck a chord with me because it's a memory that I have that's so distinct. And then jumping off of that point, I think you bring up some really critical elements here, Stephanie. And I want to jump to first Rayna and then to Destiny. Rayna, you do a lot of work with high school students. Destiny, you've obviously have been very, very deeply involved in the campus world. So have we made mistakes, Rayna, with what you're seeing in terms of Zionist identity amongst high schoolers or understanding of what Zionism is? And what are the changes you would recommend? And then Destiny, I'll ask you the same question in terms of what we're seeing on the college campus.
So I think number one, not being inclusive of all groups of people. And I say this with love, and I say this as the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. And as someone who was involved with a lot of Jewish organizations growing up, I feel like there was such a focus on the Jewish population that we weren't inclusive of other populations. You know, when I was in college and they were gay students who were supporting anti-Israel programs and Black students, you know, for example, they didn't know that Israel's the only country you could be gay and alive at the same time. Now, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm very familiar with the Jewish people working with the African American community and advancement of civil rights. Most people don't know about that. More people follow Kanye West on social media. So if there's no context at all, and that's their first touch point, we have a problem. And part of why I'm so committing to working with elementary school students and working with groups who aren't Jewish is because I don't want somebody's first connection to Judaism or to Israel to be this on the front of their school newspaper, which this was my school newspaper in 2013. Back then, the anti-Israel club at my school maybe had like 12, 13 people. If you saw videos out of FAU last week, you would see that 200 people were marching down the breezeway. There was a student arrested for kicking a police officer. And I think back to all the community organizing that happened. And it just shows that there are gaps that we need to work on. So I'm very passionate about reaching people when they're young and through the lens of empathy and kindness, because the truth is our differences are our superpower, but the way that the world tries to put us against each other because of our differences, I really believe that if we can empower young people to see each person as a person and not an extension of their family's politics or, you know, whatever faith, you know, that they believe in, that's super important. And one other example I want to give, and it's controversial, but I'm going to say it, is a couple years ago in South Florida, there was a principal who sent out an email saying that he couldn't say if the Holocaust had actually happened. And in that same email, the principal, who happened to be African American, also said, I can't say if slavery, you know, actually happened. The soundbite that made it out was principal denies the Holocaust, which I'm going to tell you all internally. This particular high school, the principal let students go on March of the Living. Almost every Jewish and Israel organization you can think of has been in that school with representatives. And the way that we treated this person who has been involved and has had relationships with people in our organizations, our community bullied him online. And I see that as a fault in education on our part of the institution, because that principal felt comfortable enough to send the email. And then the way that we treated him, I can tell you he wasn't an anti-Semite before, but once everyone all over the world starts posting about him and about his family and his career, you could understand why that person probably doesn't like our community. Whereas in these moments, if we could have a conversation with the person before we cancel them, wouldn't it be much more effective for that principal to be an ambassador of our cause? This is how I got it wrong. This is how you could do it differently. So we also as a community have to understand that we don't want people, we shouldn't treat people in a way that we wouldn't want to be treated ourselves, period.
Yeah, I hear you, Rayna, and I think it's funny, the passion I hear from you with this one particular story is actually one that I have felt not in the opposite way, but for similar reasons, you know, and I'll connect it to a lot of the work that Destiny's focused on, where it really is primarily working with non-Jewish students, right? And focusing on those students and building the connections to Israel and deeper understanding of Israel through those students. And we shouldn't kid ourselves. This hard work has been put in for a very long time, for many years. I think a lot of the Jewish community, many members of the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community have put in a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of genuine relationship building in the community space and in the campus space. So I think that's an example where I hear you. I definitely don't think that that's the norm. Not that's been my experience at all. It's definitely not the norm. And I think maybe, at least from what I know, I'll speak on behalf of myself and what I've seen with a lot of colleagues and friends in the past few weeks is a real sense of feeling alone right now, a real true sense of feeling alone. And it's very hurtful for people who have been in spaces where they are very committed to the numerous causes that have nothing to do with being Jewish or Israel and not feeling that reciprocated. So I'm wondering, Destiny, if you could kind of touch on that, you know, what you're feeling from the students, what you're seeing, especially in terms of these, you know, concrete efforts that you have been a part in leading, but ones that you have seen yourself for so many years on the college campus with the way this conversation is playing out in the last few weeks.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so to give kind of a picture of me, I know you read my bio, but, you know, so I grew up Christian. I am a Christian. I was really involved in, you know, Zionist advocacy at the University of Missouri as an undergraduate student. I graduated, I went to grad school in Israel. I worked at CUFI for a while, where I worked with mostly, you know, Christian students. I came to work at ICC and I worked with almost 100% Jewish students, helping them when they were in crisis mode. And then for the last year, I've been, you know, broadening the base of students that we serve to beyond the Jewish community. And so I've really worked with just a diverse group of students on this, you know, in this cause. And I mean, you know, first, to kind of touch on something we talked about earlier, like Zionist education and the role that plays in this. Many of the Jewish students that I have worked with, because they know and they're so intimately familiar with the history of the Jewish people and the different ways that anti-Semitism plays out, sometimes they assume that their peers on campus understand what is anti-Semitic and they understand ways that Jewish people are discriminated against. And, you know, kind of similar to what Rayna is kind of touching on, sometimes I've had to say, hey, you know, look at me. I am a friend of the Jewish people. I am deeply committed and invested in this cause. And every day in conversations with my students, at the time they were mostly Jewish students, I am still learning every day different ways that Jewish people experience anti-Semitism. I helped a number of students pass IHRA resolutions at their campuses. And as a part of that initiative, I would help them put like words to explaining and sharing their own experiences with anti-Semitism. And I had a student tell me, I've never really experienced anti-Semitism, but one time someone told me to like pick up pennies. And I had never heard that. I had no idea that that was even like a thing. And I'd been working in doing this work for several years. I had lived in Israel. I'd done Ulpan. I had worked at ICC for, I think like 2 or 3 years at that point. Okay. So if I am still continually like learning, and I've been a part of this movement since 2011, then you can't expect, this is what I tell my students, you can't expect your peers who are 18, 19 years old, maybe they have never really been friends with anyone who's Jewish before. You can't expect them to understand where you're coming from. And so it is really important to take a step back and have those conversations. And it isn't fair that the responsibility and like the burden of educating the public is on, you know, the average Jewish person, maybe, you know, walking around. But that is kind of a reality. And when we have the energy and the strength for that, it is important to have the grace for people to have those conversations and to do that education. And, you know, in that the last almost 3 weeks now have been incredibly trying for like everyone in this movement, and for many students, you know, particularly the students, you know, beyond the Jewish community that I'm working closely with right now. They're like just kind of trying to wrap their heads around, you know, what is going on in Israel. And yeah, I think it's hard for us in the West, especially if you are not super familiar with the Middle East and the dynamics of the Middle East. It's hard to wrap your mind around the brutality. I think for everyone, just in the West or not, like wrapping your mind around the brutality of these Hamas attacks has been so challenging, because there's just a complete lack of humanity in what happened on October 7th. And so but, you know, at the same time, Israel knew, and I think all of us who have been knowledgeable on this subject, we've known the evil that Hamas was capable of, right? We know there's a reason for the Israeli blockade of Gaza. That didn't happen in a vacuum. Like what a lot of Israel's enemies are saying right now is, oh, what happened on October 7th didn't happen in a vacuum. It's a part of the resistance. No, the blockade on Gaza did not happen in a vacuum. We've known the evil that Hamas was capable of. But for students who are new to this subject and new to the Middle East and they're just new, it's really hard to wrap their minds around that brutality. And so once they are confronted with that, then Israel's response makes a lot more sense. And the military action that we're seeing in Gaza makes a lot more sense. Of course, the news is quickly forgetting the brutality that Israelis suffered on October 7th and just the inhumanity of it. But that's the challenge. That's the challenge right now. Just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think there was just also, and I'm sure you all experienced this, there was so much emotion, right? Just raw emotion in those first few days. And, you know, I even realized with one of my, when I say one of my childhood best friends, this is a woman I've been friends with since I'm 11 years old. And we've been there for each other through the best and the worst moments in life. And like, I remember yelling at her. Like I just yelled at her the day after because she's in the DEI world and she does train. And I was like flipping out on her with something that she said. This is one of my best friends. And finally yesterday, like I reached out to her and I was like, can we talk? And like, we both cried on the call and whatever. And I was like, you need to understand that my community, and I don't need you to understand the level of it, just like the same way something may happen to another community. And I may not understand, right? I'm not intimately involved with the conflict in Armenia right now. And I know how horrific that is, the war in the Ukraine, like so I allowed her that space. And I think what you touched on, both Destiny, you and Rayna, is like just taking back for a second and understand the space that people are coming in, you know, and just kind of allowing ourselves to be like raw and honest in a way that is pragmatic and formidable and approachable. And I think that's really what will help other folks understand. So there's no question, Stephanie, that we've heard anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, a lot of anti. And we're going to continue, sadly, to see a lot of that right now. At least, you know, in the current period, there's no question that the growing level of anti-Semitism, even before the horrific massacre and attack on October 7th, was of grave concern in this country, and how that comes to play, for lack of a better term, with the discourse around Zionism, not just as a community activist, but as a mother, right? Like, I think of myself as a mother too, and how we are, you know, holding space, I think, for a critical conversation around anti-Semitism and really anti-Israel sentiment. Some of it that is just so extreme, and there is absolutely no rationale behind. Many people that are fair-minded, like-minded individuals, academics, not activists per se, have said, you know, a lot of the language and caricatures of what we're seeing, this is very, very reminiscent of a Nazi period. It's very frightening. It is very, very frightening, not just here in the United States, across Europe. We saw a really horrific protest in Sydney as well. So how are we balancing, right? Like, both the recognition and needing to, you know, educate and do whatever we can in terms of the anti-Semitism, but really, you know, also feeling safe and secure in general as a community, and not allowing it to completely overtake our Zionist identity and Zionist education for the next generation. How do you see us balancing those two things?
Well, so far, I don't think we have balanced them, honestly. You said something really great about being a mother. And I, you know, Destiny had mentioned earlier that people don't always know when they're outside of our community what anti-Semitism is. And what that leads us to is a lot of sort of casual anti-Semitism of things that are accepted as true. And without the education to undo that damage, undo that knowledge, people can say things that actually are inherently anti-Semitic, and they themselves aren't aware of it. I have 4 children, 4 boys. 3 of them had their bar mitzvahs in Israel. And what we do for all 4 of them is right at that bar mitzvah age, they go to Yad Vashem. We're very blessed. My husband's aunt is a Yad Vashem educator. She teaches teachers how to teach about the Holocaust. And so we're very blessed. She gives us a tour. We have a lot of good conversations. We talk about the history of World War II, but also how the state was founded. And there's a lot of misconception about that period between 1945 and 1948 about what was going on in the state of Israel. Right after my children went back to school from COVID, it was Black History Month. And they were having a lot of conversations in all of their classes about racism. And in a computer science class, my eldest had joined the conversation because, as somebody who's visibly Jewish and the only one in his large school, he does get a lot of anti-Semitism tossed his way. And he had joined in the conversation about the racism he experiences. And the teacher, who happened to be Black, had looked at him and he had said, you know, because he's Israeli, and he'd related it back to being Israeli, being Jewish. And after he had said his piece, the teacher said to him, yeah, but you guys got Israel for the Holocaust. And that was how he dismissed my son's comment. It was extremely dismissive, and my son didn't know what to say. He was kind of stricken, and the class moved on. And it was like, you don't really have anything to offer here in a conversation about racism or discrimination. And he came home and he told me about it. He was very confused. And I flew into a rage, obviously, because I'm a mom. I flew into a rage, and I was literally sitting on my closet floor at midnight, just typing an angry letter to the principal about how we really got Israel and how we really fought for that state, and how nobody handed it to us on a silver platter, how there were, you know, groups that were constantly fighting against the British. And since this is Hadassah, I will mention that a month before we declared our independence was the Hadassah Convoy Massacre, where 72 people were massacred, very much like October 7th, to the point of being beyond recognition. We know who they were, but they couldn't all be individually identified, which is very similar to what we just saw a few weeks ago. And people who survived and people who were in Israel at the time said that that massacre was one of the final catalysts in declaring the state of Israel, because the British worked together with the Arabs. It's not that they just looked the other way, they actually conspired with them. And so it was a monumental lesson in our history, once again, as if we need to be told over and over again in every generation. It was once again that lesson that we cannot leave our safety and security in anyone else's hands. And a lot of the Jews living in Palestine had become complacent, thinking, well, the British will protect us from the Arabs. And we see that this isn't true. So how do we balance this? Well, I think we really have to balance with education. We have to make sure that our children have a vocabulary and have information to recognize the tropes when they come their way and not simply accept it, not simply look the other way at the stereotypes. We have to make sure that they know the history, that they know what's really happening in Israel, so that when somebody calls it an apartheid state, they can counter maybe with what apartheid actually is. Most people don't know anything about apartheid in South Africa, much less how it applies to Israel. I have South African family, and I remember reading books on it going, what? How are they, the only way you can call Israel an apartheid state is if you don't know what it was to begin with. And in truth, members of South Africa's parliament have come to Israel and said, hey, don't take that word. That's appropriation, and that's, it's reductive to what we went through. So we need to be, the balance is they need to spit facts. They need to have the information to look at somebody and say, no, that's just wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Because what happens when somebody who doesn't have any real information is proven wrong? They falter, they fall apart. It becomes, a sort of a personal attack, and then the real motivation comes through. They'll show their true colors, and you won't convince that person. That person's probably lost, maybe not, but probably. But if there's other people in the room witnessing the conversation who are still on the fence, those are the people that those conversations need to reach.
Yeah, I love that, Stephanie. And one of the people that is very interesting, one of the people that I've found the most comfort in the past few weeks, he's actually an old classmate of mine from college. And he moved to America from Syria when he was 8 years old. He was born in Damascus, and we used to debate a lot. Like, we always respected each other, but we debated a lot. And he's a very, very smart guy. He went to London School of Economics. He's a lawyer. I mean, he's a brilliant individual. And he has just been such a rock for me. I mean, just in the purest, most loving, genuine way, and has shared his fears for the world, for a world where propaganda is just rampant, right? Where he referred to it as chosen propaganda. It was really fascinating. He said, on the one hand, we have access to everything, right? Like, there's no question. Rayna, Destiny, both of you are very, very active in terms of media, utilizing media as a means of education and engagement with next gen, understanding how important that is. But with all of that access comes responsibility as well. And it was a really fascinating term. But it's to your point, Stephanie, that you just never know where those conversations could lead to. And if you would have asked me when I was 19 years old, like, do you think you guys would ever be? And he's literally become one of my closest friends and my greatest comforts, and someone that I know is praying for the people of Israel. And it's just, it's surreal. So absolutely that engagement. And I know it's something that both Rayna and Destiny as well take absolute passion in the professional work that they do and who they are as women as well. So we have time for final thoughts. I know it's wild. I could speak to you all night long because there's so much to talk about. And I'll start with you, Rayna, and I'm going to kind of like combine two questions, and it's going to be the same for each of you wonderful women. You can answer one part or both parts. It's fine, but it really is both. What is your vision, or what do you think are the right strategies, or your hopes, or your dreams, right, for where the conversation around Zionism will go in the next few years? And given the reality, right, of where young people are getting their information from and how they're absorbing information in a way that is just fast paced and usually controlled by an algorithm, like, how are we taking these two realities of engaging the next generation of Zionist women, helping to amplify their voices and strengthen them and strengthen our relationships, both within the Jewish community, outside of the Jewish community, around Israel. What are the points of the bright lights of optimism that you see, or how you would ideally see that playing out in the next few years?
First and foremost, I want to say when it comes to community organizing and outreach and different approaches, it should never be or, it should always be and. And I really want to acknowledge you, Michelle. I'll never forget, I was a freshman in college. I flew out to a Stand With Us conference, first semester, a freshman.
I'm getting scared. I don't remember what I said.
It doesn't matter what you said, because you left such an impression on me that I looked up to you as a woman. I'm not just saying that. Like, I saw you up there and I heard you, and I was so early on in my journey. Never in a million years did I ever think that you and I would be in a call together. High five, although I am very proud to be here. But I want to say that throughout my journey, you have always been a connector. You have always been a cheerleader. And in times where challenges, you listened and gave advice. So I think the first part of how we talk about the future of Zionist education is everybody needs to play together. This isn't a sandbox where only certain people can play. Because the truth is, if we really came together as different institutions and sort of pinpointed where our strengths are, we would be much better off promoting each other and the strength, as opposed to having to, fight through the noise to be the one to get the thing. Where I hope the future of Zionist education goes, I mean, when I was working at Stand With Us, I realized early on that JROTC is a very, very important community to be working with. I've spoken to over 20,000 JROTC cadets and my experiences. And for those who are listening who don't know what JROTC is, it's students in middle school and high school who self-select themselves as leaders. And it's a class taught by retired American professionals. And in communities that are more disadvantaged, those children are going to go to the military because they see that as an opportunity to change their lives. And in some of the more affluent areas, a lot of times those kids are doing JROTC because maybe they don't come from a faith-based background where they have access to opportunities. So number one, I want to focus on people, on children who self-select themselves as leaders. Number two, for me and my role, and again, I've spoken to over 250,000 people through live programs all over the country. In my role, I want to be focusing on elementary school students. For me, the future is going into schools, again, where most of the people aren't Jewish, where they haven't met a Holocaust survivor, where those people don't have a Jewish friend. And for me, when I talk about my experiences being bullied for being Jewish, it's not just the anti-Semitism I experienced in college. It's also in third grade at the Orthodox school, the Jewish kids who picked on me because I ate pork, because I was different. And when we put some of these terms through the lens of feeling bad to be different, opening up a space for other students to talk about challenges they've overcome, you don't have to be Jewish to identify with that experience. One other thing I'll share is when I'm in middle schools and high schools and I'm educating on Zionism, I talk about it through the lens of feminism. I look at the class and I say, who here has ever heard something ugly about feminism? And they start saying all these terrible things that they've heard, when the truth is, of all the people in the world who can't read, more than half of them are women because we don't have the same access to education. So when people are talking about Zionism, Jewish people having a home and having a right to a home, and that home being Israel, it's not racist. But for a lot of these students, like Destiny was explaining, if they have no connection to Israel and no connection to the conflict, but the first time they hear about Zionism, it's followed by racism, then that's an even bigger challenge for what we're trying to accomplish as institutions. So number one, it's broadening the base. And number two, it's relating these experiences and emotions to that of our audience, because no one's going to remember every single date. No one's going to remember the complete history of Israel after one presentation. I don't remember everything Michelle said when I was 19 years old, but I'm here, and that's the power of women who do. Thanks, Michelle.
I love that. Relatable Zionism. I love that. Making Zionism something people can relate to, they can understand, and that matters to them in their lives for the individuals that they are, the places that they're coming from, and how they're coming into the conversation. I love that, Rayna. I love that practical advice. And I love you, as you know. So proud of you. Destiny, your hopes, your dreams, your vision for where the conversation and the discourse around Zionism will continue. And you are in the heart of it. And I give you so much strength and continued, power and optimism as you are in the thick of it right now with all of your students and your student leaders. But in your wildest dreams, in the most positive way possible, where do you see this conversation going in the future when it comes to Zionism? And what are your recommendations?
Yes, I have two hopes, two challenges. What I would love to see is, one, I would love to see every Zionist be proud. If you know who you are and you know that you represent something positive and you know that you are on the right side of history, do not let anyone tell you that you are on the wrong side of history. Don't let anyone tell you that you are something that you know you are not. And the second thing is, I have been so privileged to see and experience how so many different people can connect to Israel through different ways. You really can't imagine or limit the ways that people will connect to Israel. There's a student that I work with who attends Morehouse. And when I first met him, I took him and I think like 3 or 4 just Morehouse college students to coffee. And Morehouse is one of the most prestigious historically Black colleges in the country, but it is only men. And I was talking to them about just why they selected their school. And they each started telling me about how much they love their school and just how much it means to them. And one of them said to me, when I first came to visit my school as a high school student, I saw all of these Black men wearing suits. And it just was such a powerful experience for me to have a place that was carved out special to serve Black men. And he said, that's why I understand why the Jewish people need Israel. I could not have made that connection for him. I could not have imagined or hoped for someone to have that connection, but it was a great light bulb moment for me. We cannot limit the ways that people will connect to Israel. And so if we are being proud Zionists and we are sharing the story of Israel and we are just sharing what Zionism means to us, other people will connect to Israel in ways that we've never thought of before.
I love that. I love that story. And I want to take him and just have him right next to me with just that beautiful inspiration and that sentiment. And absolutely, amen. We just never know how someone's going to connect. And it is just such a beautiful country that represents so many layers and elements of inspiration for people. And hearing that, it's like actually giving me goosebumps to remember that. We all need to remember that, including everyone listening on the call right now. During this difficult time, the absolute inspiration that Israel is, the people of Israel are, everything they are doing in this moment, coming together, and how other people, when they engage with Israel for this first time in the Jewish community, they see that as well. So thank you, Destiny. That's a beautiful sentiment. And Stephanie, you can finish us off, what are your hopes, your dreams for where the discourse around Zionism is headed? And what would you hope, is the direction that we go in the next few years?
I'm a dreamer. I have high hopes. I agree with you, Michelle. I agree that language matters a lot. We need to reclaim the language with regards to Israel, with regards to Zionism. I remember years ago playing Scrabble online with somebody, and I tried to use the word Jew, and it doesn't accept it. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. It won't accept it. And I looked up why it won't accept the word Jew, and it's because anti-Semites made it a dirty word. So it gets labeled off with the curse words. What a tragedy that they could take that word from us. They can't take the word Zionism. Now they're using Zionist because they can't use Jew. And so we need to reclaim that word. We need to stop allowing them to try and claim that, it's not about Israelis, it's just about the Zionists. It's not about Jews, it's just about the Zionists. We need to reclaim the language and call them out on that duplicity. It's simply not true. And we can see, when students are barricading themselves into a library in the United States because they're unsafe, we know it's not about land. We know it's not about Zionism. We know that this is anti-Semitism. So it's time to reclaim that, to reclaim our language, reclaim the discourse about Israel. My big hope is, like I said earlier, I definitely believe that the Israeli media has taken a new turn, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more unapologetic with regards to their PR in the past few weeks. I want to see us stop asking permission and start demanding respect. I'm really tired of the apologists and the as a Jews who go around being like, well, I'm a Jew, but I don't agree with Zionism. And I'm a Jew, but this sort of genetic insidership that gives people credence to tokenism within the anti-Semitic movements. Well, I'm a Jew, so as a rabbi, that sort of tokenism that allows the people who want to tear us down and really raise from the river to the sea. I want to see us push back more on that kind of discourse and reclaim it. And like you said, Destiny, be proud of it. I want to see that pride. And I really want to see more and more what I've seen these past couple of weeks, where people who aren't Israeli and people who aren't Jewish are getting more and more vocal and calling out the lies and calling out the fake news and calling out the propaganda where they see it. It's really encouraging to see so many people doing that. And as a community, we need to amplify their voices. We need to, every time somebody opens their mouth, like I said, the best way to get bullied is to express that you support Israel. And so we need to support those people who are supporting Israel and make it a space where more and more people feel safe to do that. I don't think it has been safe, and we're seeing that it's not safe, and we're outnumbered. So we need to shift the balance there and make it a safe space and really amplify those voices and make everyone feel safe and protected and that they have the community's back when they speak out on our behalf.
I love that. I love that. Taking it back. And I think there is no more fitting moment than the one that we are in right now to take back what Zionism means, to build those communities, remember that inspiration that's there, and have that incredible sense of pride, inspire Zionism. As we are here tonight at the Hadassah Symposium proclaims, let us take all of those beautiful messages, head forward into what I hope will be a moment that we are able to hold on to as a community, but please God, only see brighter days from, and grow in strength. And really, really just as we started, we'll close out in the same way before I give it back to you, Stephanie. All of us are giving in all of our strength and our energy and our mitzvot, our good deeds that we are doing, every moment of every positive breath we are taking, when we're able to take those deep breaths, to just breathing air and oxygen into the people of Israel and to everyone that needs that energy right now, and continuing to be inspired. I have left this evening. I needed this evening. I'm sure many of you needed this evening. It has just really touched my heart in such a way to know that there are beautiful, incredible women doing this phenomenal work and that are on the right side of history. So thank you all so much. And Stephanie, thank you again for being such an integral part of this wonderful symposium. Stephanie, Destiny, Rayna, I love you all. Stephanie, back to you.
Thank you.
Wow, Michelle, Destiny, Stephanie, Rayna, that was unbelievably powerful. And you're right, it was exactly what we needed in this moment. So thank you all. What an evening, what a message, what a program.